I'm Film Reviewer Schulz, and as you already know, I remembered because you probably don't want to. Although, in the case of today's film, I doubt many of you would have heard of it. Yes, today we have one of those strange little oddities to review. A made-for-TV film that swipes its title from a 50s B-movie, Earth vs. the Spider.
Yes, apparently back in 2001, the channel Cinemax made a series of creature features. Yes, that's actually what they called this series of films, in which they would take a title from an old American International B-movie and then create a completely different plot to it.
Seems kind of pointless.
Other titles in this series include She-Creature, How to Make a Monster, The Day the World Ended, and Teenage Caveman.
They all sound like masterpieces, I'm sure, but for today, let's see what creepy crawlies lie ahead in Earth vs. the Spider.
So, oddly enough, the opening credits of this movie about somebody gaining spider powers and trying to be a superhero starts by panning through a spider web. Ring any bells?
Of course, I can't really say that it's ripping off Spider-Man because that came out a year after this, so confound you, Sam Raimi, for ripping off Earth vs. the Spider.
As the credits roll over a jazzy score, it continues to pan through the comic book of The Arachnid Avenger.
Obviously, this is the movie's substitute for Spider-Man. Sort of like how Lucky Charms became Lucky Clovers in Leprechaun.
After the credits, we see our main character, Quentin Kemmer, as he brushes his teeth and talks to the local drunken bum.
I take considerable offense to the fact that other movie bums are portrayed as drunk and crazy. I mean, that is just unrealistic and it is unreliable. Hey, there's elephants on the ceiling.
Hey, Thor, you ever wish you had another hand?
As Film Brain might say now, foreshadowing.
It seems from the newspaper that there's a murder on the loose and the police can't find it.
Because in most horror movies, the cops never know what they're doing.
So as Quentin heads out for his security job, he stops to talk to his hot neighbor.
All those cops and they can't catch this guy? I mean, I swear, if I was in uniform, I swear, I would not sleep until I smashed that insect.
More foreshadowing.
On their way out, they come across two obnoxious punks whose purpose it is to be unlikable.
Well, I must say, for a horror movie made in the 2000s, it's good they weren't made the main characters.
Before he goes to his job, he stops by his friend, the new Sulu's, comic book store, where he's buying a $300 action figure.
Because you should really be spending $300 on an action figure when you have a low-paying job and live in a cheap apartment.
At his job, Quentin works security at a research facility with an older cop, played by a not-quite Carl Malden character actor, Mario Roccozo. While on their shift, they notice a top-secret experiment involving spiders.
Because any top-secret research facility would just leave their blinds open. Thank you.
So while Quentin is out monitoring, Nick, the older cop, spots a crook on the security monitor and goes down to stop him. Then Quentin sees Nick get taken hostage and goes to rescue him, but the real police arrive, and that pretty much causes everyone inside to get killed, including Nick.
And he probably only had 2 days till retirement.
Your bullshit killed my partner. Your bullshit killed my partner. Yeah? Your partner wasn't worth shit!
Then Dan Aykroyd shows up as the only recognizable actor in this film.
I'm Detective Inspector Jack Grillo with the City Police.
Really? I thought you'd be called Joe Friday.
Obviously, I got a lot of questions for you. You gonna be all right with that?
Good to know you asked him all those questions you had.
How can you let this happen?
The police stopped him from doing anything.
It's the guy who killed his partner.
Right, because clearly he was killed with a mace can and not bullets.
Quentin then decides to inject his arm with the top-secret spider needle, so I guess he wants to become an invincible spider as well. Because, of course, no research lab would keep their top-secret experiment secured right after a break-in.
Sure, just inject yourself with a strange unknown substance that works so well for Robert Downey Jr. and Charlie Sheen. I'm having a comic book session.
Later, we see Quentin bathing in ice cubes. Then there's a long, awkward scene between him and the nurse next door.
Did the fan just have an evil laugh?
So later, Quentin goes to a bar with not Tor Johnson / George the Animal Steel, Howard George bartending. There we also see Officer Williams romancing Dan Aykroyd's wife.
You are so rude!
You're drunk.
I am not drunk.
I neither am.
Then the nurse, Stephanie, gets attacked by the murderer that's on the loose.
Hey, I swear to God, I just ran out of gas and my car's right over there.
Yeah, Willie, it's me. Don't give me that old line about running out of gas. You don't even have a car.
Oh, that's right, I'm sorry. But could you give me $1? I'm saving up for a car.
Hey, I was already able to get a car. It was a bargain.
Did you feel that?
Feel what?
Movement, like something shaking.
I guess his spidey sense must be tingling.
So Quentin throws the murderer through a doorway,
Hopefully that's an empty apartment.
and leaves the scene of the crime before the cops show up. After he gets back, Quentin starts going all nuts because he's a superhero now. We also see that Dan Aykroyd is having problems with his marriage.
This is a subplot that will be mostly pointless and go.
So the next day, Quentin starts trying to recreate the Arachnid Avenger's super high-tech hideout inside his apartment building. Pretty much the equivalent of trying to build the Batcave in a broom closet.
My word, the bat signal. Quick, to the bat cave. What? Oh my God! Oh gee, Willie, that was nice. I'm definitely not Batman.
So while Quentin helps Stephanie move some boxes into storage, Jerk and Jerhear show up again, but now Quentin has spider strength to scare them away. The next day, Quentin is at his friend, Harold from Harold and Kumar's, comic store, and, oh, look at that! They're watching the original Earth vs. the Spider on TV!
That's sort of like when they were watching The Blob in Son of the Blob, or watching Halloween in Halloween 3.
Well, there's a nice homey touch for his secret hideout.
Because if the cops find him out, it's not like they'll think that anyone who has an action figure of someone with spider powers could possibly be the person with spider powers. I mean, I'm sure Bruce Wayne wouldn't carry around his you-know-what when he's not Batman. It's a little suspicious.
So later that night, Quentin discovers his web-slinging powers, but instead of his hands, it comes out of his abdomen. While practicing, he accidentally webs his dog to the floor, and instead of just getting some scissors to cut him out, he gets some more comic book seizures and runs off into the night. Eventually he gets to a convenience store and sees some idiot who's pretending to rob his girlfriend. Thinking he's a real criminal, Quentin attacks. Understandably freaking out, the girlfriend calls the cops.
What the hell are you?
I'm Spider-Man.
Then Officer Williams shows up as Quentin lunges at him. The next day, for greater safety, he leaves his dog for the nurse to take care of while he's angsting inside his apartment. Meanwhile, the cops have found the dead body at the convenience store.
Like something sucked the life out of him.
Got a Bubba Hotep, you know.
Looks like very big cobwebs.
You know, for suspects, who's he gonna call?
Spiders! A giant legion of spiders!
Meanwhile, Quentin begins to mutate. Although somehow the next day, that's disappeared. Later, after he freaks out even more, he kills those two jerks from earlier. And then we get another pointless scene between Dan Aykroyd and his wife.
I don't give a goddamn about the killer. I don't care if he kills the whole fucking city.
Which would include you.
Seen Officer Williams. Maybe he got himself lost. Maybe he got himself dead.
Don't you mean got himself killed?
After snooping around for evidence, Elwood decides to get some answers at the lab.
You tell me, sir, what exactly do you do here?
I'm afraid that's classified information.
I know, top secret. The sign there says biochemco, so it would be safe to assume you're doing genetics research? Genetic engineering? The engineering of genetic material?
Ectoplasm? Paranormal research? Ambition from God?
I'll call the police, yo!
Wait. This is a store owner in the inner city, and all he has to protect himself is a plastic lightsaber? It's the most ridiculous... Oh, that sounds like a burglar. I'll take care of him. Aha!
Here's the money I owe you. You've been a good friend to me, Han.
So you might say his name was Han Sulu?
Ever feel like you just can't make a move?
Every day and every night.
Like someone's tied your hands and feet, can't find the knot?
That's how I feel watching this movie.
As soon as Ray finds Williams, his drunken wife, who has followed him here, shows up and falls over when Williams shoots himself. Then she pretty much dies when Quentin sucks her soul out, or something like that. Then we finally see the monster that Quentin has become. And he looks more like a mutated Quasimodo than a spider. Still, especially for a made-for-TV film, this certainly looks better than other spider-human hybrids like Dr.Smith, or even other giant spiders like Pennywise. So somehow, within a matter of minutes, Quentin has managed to get Stephanie downstairs and into a massive web.